اعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي دين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة حطب في جيدها حبل من مسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you very much. And now, Declan. It's time for you.
Oh, you want to get this little thing? Lovely. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'm really delighted to be here today to tell you a little bit about my book. My book, Voices of Modern Islam, What It Means to be Muslim Today, was published in June this year by Jessica Kingsley Publishers in London. So it's really great to be given the opportunity to come here today. And maybe this little thing isn't switched on.
Maybe the mic.
Move the mic up here.
Normally my voice bellows, but not today.
You should appreciate.
Oh. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you all hear me now? Is that better? Okay. As I was saying, thank you so much for asking me to come here today to talk a little bit about my book, which is Voices of Modern Islam, What It Means to be Muslim Today, which was published in June this year by Jessica Kingsley Publishers in London. Now, it's a documentary. There's a bit of an echo on this.
Yeah, there is, yeah. I think one of the speakers is blind.
All right.
I'll adjust it as you
Will you? Okay, no problem. Okay.
Yeah.
If you look maybe a little bit forward.
Yeah, yeah, that's no problem. Okay.
They can read you.
If you're recording this, do you want me to start from the beginning again, or shall I just shall I just continue?
You can, it's being live broadcast. You can continue.
I continue. Okay, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon I'm going to give a kind of a general speech about the book, and I'm going to cover 4 key areas. I'm going to talk a little bit about extremism and radicalisation. I'm going to talk about Sharia law, a little bit about homosexuality, and also integration, which is also a very big topic. I know that a lot of this doesn't apply to your community. I know that you're a small community here in the UK. I have worked quite a lot with the other Ahmadiyya community because my book is a documentary style book. What I did was, when I was writing this book, I interviewed over 100 Muslims in the UK, and they came from, Shia backgrounds, Sunni backgrounds, Sufi and Ahmadiyya. I did speak to your president, and I did include a paragraph about your community, but it's not so extensively covered in the book. So, one of the burning questions that people ask me is, why did I write a book about Islam? And, I have wondered if writing a book about Islam in the current climate has been a wise thing to do, because Britain is really still recovering from the terrorist attacks in 2017. The pain, the suffering of victims' families and friends is still very raw and must never be minimised. You have to think about Paris, Barcelona, Nice and Tunisia, to name but a few. They too have also experienced the brutality of Islamic terrorists. So that's more victims, more misery and more pain. So is this really a good time to publish a book telling people that Islam is a peaceful religion? That not all Muslims are bad people? And that the Prophet Muhammad never sought to spread the word of Islam by the sword? Perhaps the timing isn't right, but if not now, then when would be a good time? People have asked me, why did I write this book about Islam? And I tell them that there are 2 reasons, one personal and one professional. I lived in London during the 1990s. And before I returned to university as a mature student, I worked in the catering trade. And during this time, I met many young men from Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt and Algeria who considered themselves Muslims. They liked football, they liked food, they liked nice clothes, and they liked London, the city of freedom. They also liked alcohol, lots of it. They liked sex with men and women, wherever there was a vacancy. They lied and cheated in immigration matters, and often paid between £1,000 and £2,000 to vulnerable females who agreed to marry them in order to stay in the UK. And their parents never asked any questions. Muslims, that is who they identified themselves to be. They didn't eat pork, and every year they did Ramadan. It was really like watching a charade, because after they're divorced, their pretend wife, some remarried properly. And at this stage, they renounced their old ways and returned to Islam. This meant no more alcohol, no more casual sex, no more gambling. They either reduced or stopped socializing with non-Muslims. One minute you were their friend, the next you were a kafir. Their time had come to start going to the mosque, to read the Quran, pray 5 times a day, to return to the ways of Allah. Muslims. I now realise that I didn't have the best introduction to Muslims or Islam. One of the reasons I wrote this book was to explore the religion and really get to know it. I wanted to find out more about Muslim people and their customs, because what I had seen these young men doing didn't make sense. However, these experiences occurred over 20 years ago. So it's reasonable to ask, therefore, if things have changed since then. Now, the answer to this question lies in the opening chapter of my book, where, as a result of various interviews with young Muslims, my findings are carefully laid out. And I talk quite extensively in the opening chapter and also in a later chapter about young Muslims living here in the UK. The second reason for writing this book stems from a professional capacity. I'm a social worker by trade, and I have worked in the past with mentally ill and young offenders for many years. Now, these experiences compel me to look further into the reasons why some, albeit a small number, of Muslims get drawn into extremism and radicalisation. And I'd really like to run through a few of the reasons why young people get caught up in this. And this is taken from chapter 8 of my book. Some young Muslims lack a sense of belonging. They feel rootless and they lack purpose. They get offered a place amongst those who are already radicalised to come and join them. This is an attractive offer to some young people who were born in Britain but who don't feel British, and to those who feel ostracised by mainstream society due to factors such as poor integration, unemployment, and a general disillusionment with the Western world. Some young Muslims feel alienated from society and think that they are unable to fully follow their religion here in Britain. They are influenced and radicalised by hate preachers in certain mosques and on social media who tell them that living in this type of Western society, which isn't predominantly Muslim, that they are hypocrites. Jihad, for some, is seen as a desire and a yearning for adventure, an exciting thrill for young men. There is this innate attraction towards jihad, which is seen as something that is macho and full of bravado. It is seen as something only for the physically fit and emotionally strong. General ignorance about Islam, where young, inexperienced Muslims who have never read or understood the Quran are affected by what they see on certain TV Islamic channels. They watch programs that often give them a biased view of world politics and Islam. Their minds become confused as the truth and lies become inseparable. Pulpit preaching by radical imams espousing the ultra-conservative brand of Sunni Islam, which is designed to brainwash young and impressionable Muslims into terrorism. And their biased views and ignorance of the teachings of Islam and misinterpretations of the Quran are coupled with a hatred for non-Muslims. Martyrdom is also taken out of context from the Quran. Here Islamists have formed the belief that those who are martyred will go straight to paradise and that there will be 72 virgins waiting for them. Some extremists have shown traces of psychopathic behaviour and mental illness. Others may have problems with drug and alcohol misuse, and some will be known to the criminal justice system before becoming radicalised either in the community or in prison. A large percentage of imams are out of touch with their individual communities and have repeatedly failed to produce a narrative that counteracts terrorism, allowing the problem to grow rather than decrease. And my final point in this is, before I move on to something else, is about interpretation and misinterpretation in the Quran. Now, at home I've got 5 copies of the Holy Quran. Now, all of these are English translations, but all vary in their choice of words and description. Some are minor differences, but some additions have left me feeling confused and wondering if I have mixed up verses from another edition. Such is the degree of difference. Now, you have to question why there are so many variances in these translations. You also have to question why scholars and academics have not worked harder to reduce misunderstanding and minimise the differences in these translations to ensure an accepted consensus of the Word of God from its original Arabic text. With so many translations from a wide range of sources, it is only natural that they lead to divisions, confusion, and ultimately misinterpretation. And isn't that one of the criticisms directed towards jihadists, that they have misunderstood the Quran? Well, I have to tell you, surround yourself with a vast amount of different translations that are currently available, and you will just see how easily it is to misunderstand the true message. Now, some of that might sound very negative, what I've just said in the last couple of minutes, but I'd like to tell you that in the main, my book is an extremely positive portrayal of Islam and Muslims. I have found nothing critical to say about Islam or the Prophet Muhammad. Rather than criticism, my criticisms at times may have been the way that some Muslims practice their religion. But my book does clear up misconceptions about the religion. It explains the basics and it explores many contentious issues. It also is primarily a collection of viewpoints, as I said from the beginning, from a wide range of Muslims living in the UK, from the Sunni, Shia, Ahmadiyya, Sufi and Salafi groups. During the course of writing the book, I was absolutely fascinated to learn about the Prophet Muhammad during my research, because I hardly knew anything about him beforehand. And that's not unusual. It's not unusual for Christians to know very little about the Prophet Muhammad. And here is, I'm going to read an extract from the introduction regarding that. As a non-Muslim, writing this book has been one of the most profound and supremely interesting times of my life. It has also been a time of deep reflection, a time to think about God in ways that I had never before considered. It also made me contemplate my own faith and assess how I perceive God. As a Catholic, it has brought me closer to my own faith rather than pushing me away from the religion that I was born into and much cherish. In the process, I have been introduced to the life of the Prophet Muhammad and have appreciated the deep respect Muslims hold for him. I too bestow this honour and place the reverence Muslims have for him on par with the belief and respect that I and fellow Christians have in and for Jesus. It is interesting to hear an imam tell me during my research about the Prophet Muhammad and how he once said that of all the prophets, he felt closest to Jesus. Now, Islam teaches that God loves his creation 70 times more than we love our own mothers, and that he gave us the best of prophets who were all blessed with certain qualities to fulfill their mission. In doing so, Noah was given persistence. Abraham was given courage. Moses was given leadership. Jesus was given patience. And Muhammad was given wisdom. Let me now read you a quote from a well-known Irish playwright, George Bernard Shaw, who once said that he greatly admired the Prophet. And this is what he said. I have always held the religion of Muhammad in high estimation because of its wonderful vitality. It is the only religion which appears to me to possess that assimilating capacity to the changing phase of existence, which can make itself appeal to every age. I have studied him, the wonderful man, and in my opinion, far from being an antichrist, he must be called the saviour of humanity. During writing the book, nearly every Muslim that I spoke to, I asked them, what was your favourite story about the Prophet? Tell me a favourite story. So, I was given many snippets of stories that would have come from the Hadith, and I put them together. I think I put together about a dozen of my favourite stories about the Prophet, and I'm going to read one to you now, which isn't not that well known, and it's from the Hadith. Go to page 89. One day, the Prophet was out walking when he came across a woman carrying some heavy bags. He instantly went to help her and offered to carry the bags home for her. The woman did not know who the prophet was, as she had never seen him before, but she accepted his help. In those days, it was an unusually kind gesture for a man to help a woman in such a manner. During the journey, the woman started to talk about a man that was referred to as the prophet, reciting bad stories that she had heard about him, and saying she disliked his beliefs. She believed he played tricks on people in order for them to convert to Islam. She added that she didn't want to fall victim to his magic and trickery. The prophet listened, but remained silent. When they got to the woman's house, somebody close by recognized the prophet and asked the woman, "Why is the prophet carrying your bags?" The woman turned to the prophet and said, "Why didn't you tell me that you were the prophet?" To which he replied, "If I had told you, you wouldn't have allowed me to carry your bags." However, sometimes miracles happen. The woman was so overcome by the excellent moral kindness of the prophet that she felt guided by God to say to him, "I accept you," and thereby she became a Muslim. There are many stories, certainly the ones, my favourites that Muslims told me, and that's contained in the second chapter of the book. And also in that chapter of the book, I give a brief history about Muhammad's life and also a brief history about how Islam was founded. Moving on, let me talk a little bit about Sharia law. Muslims from different groups sometimes have differing views on certain aspects of their religion, but none more so, I suspect, than if I had gathered views from a range of different Christian denominations about the Christian faith. Even archbishops can sometimes have opposing views. Now take the current Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and his predecessor, Rowan Williams. In 2008, Rowan Williams, the former Archbishop, he backed the introduction of Sharia law in Britain. He said that given Islamic law official status in the UK would help achieve social cohesion because some Muslims did not relate to the British legal system. On the other hand, earlier this year, the current Archbishop, Justin Welby, he wrote a book entitled The Road to Canterbury. And here he clearly stipulated why Sharia, or why he thinks Sharia law, cannot be incorporated into British law. And this is what he said: Sharia, deeply embedded in a system of faith and understanding of God, cannot become part of another narrative. Sharia law should never become part of the British legal system. Islamic rules are incompatible with Britain's laws because they've been developed on the principles of a different culture. And chapter 5 of my book outlines in detail what Sharia law is and the views that Muslims, or the Muslims that I have interviewed here in the UK, that their views and what they have to say about it. And so, some of the views are very interesting indeed. Okay, moving on to another area about sex and sexuality. What happens if you are Muslim and you're a homosexual? That's a big question, isn't it? And a very, very raw and contentious question, and a question that I asked many Muslims. And during the course of my research, I spoke to several gay and lesbian Muslims who contributed their stories to the book. But what happens if you arrive in that situation? Do you keep quiet about it? Do you get married and lead a double life? Do you pray 5 times a day and hope that it'll go away? Or do you make peace with God, your Creator, and carry on being a Muslim? Or do you leave the religion altogether and find peace elsewhere? I'd like to finish off before I allow you to ask some questions. I'd like to talk a little bit about integration, which is always another contentious subject and topic, between Muslims and non-Muslims. And I suppose here I kind of cover the historical context. Muslims who came to live in Britain in the 60s and 70s, they came from subcontinent countries, from Pakistan, India and Bangladesh. They only planned to stay for a short period. They intended to earn some money and then to return to their homelands. Some of these people, or a lot of them, didn't invest in life in Britain, and as a result, they never tried to integrate. And then sadly for many, the dream of returning home one day never happened, and they stayed here in Britain, often living unhappy lives while they hankered after life back home, a home that would never be theirs again. Their home was in Britain now, but they failed to feel at home here. The next generation, their children, they fared a little bit better, but adapted many of their parents' customs and traditions whilst resisting British customs and values. Now, my book clearly explains the differences between culture and Islam and how people need to be able to clearly distinguish between both of these factors. Even some Muslims, mainly older and less educated, sometimes fail to discern these differences through lack of thought and direction. Now, the current generation of young British Muslims born here, second generation, are faring out far better than their parents and grandparents. You know, they are much better integrated, better educated, happier, and in the main are decent, hard-working, ethical, and really a big, big asset to this country. They appreciate the fine balance between integration and assimilation, thereby meaning by that you can integrate, respect and be friends with somebody without emulating their ways. And I've given several examples of that in the book. I think that's probably as much as I want to say. That's kind of I know it's a bit rushed, but yeah. Let me see what else. I know that one lady said she'd already read the book. So let me see what else. As I said, it's a good introduction. I mean, this book is selling well in colleges, universities, and libraries. It's a good introduction to Islam, and it kind of, you know, it really tells people what being a Muslim is. There's a brief history about the Prophet Muhammad and Islam. You know, the essence of Islam, women in Islam. If I'd known that there was so many women going to be here today, I think I might have covered that in my speech. But there is a full chapter about women in Islam. Sex, arranged marriages and sexuality. I did a chapter on converts, extremism and radicalization, anti-Muslim prejudice, and other thoughts and opinions. So I cover all the main key areas. And when I started writing the book, first of all, I just wanted to really write about extremism and radicalization. But I think earlier on, it became clear to me that there was so much more to Islam, that actually extremism and radicalization is chapter 8. So, you know, I kind of was way down on the list of you know, because I wanted to explore what Islam is and what the Prophet Muhammad and how he envisaged Islam to be. And I think I've done I hope I've done a good job in doing that. I haven't brought copies today. I'm not forcing anyone to buy it, but it is available in Waterstones, and it's also available on Amazon or in Kindle, as you said, how you downloaded it. I think that's probably all I want to say on the matter. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has about any aspect of the book. Thank you. Thanks.
Did you face any hostility when you were carrying out this research?
No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. And very, very rarely was anybody rude to me. I think all the mosques
No, I didn't mean in that sense. What I meant was in the sense when you dealt with issues like homosexuality or no
hostility. No, I mean obviously there's people have it's a topic that people would have very strong views on, but not hostility.
Not hostility.
No.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, you first.
Okay, I thought the book was excellent. If anybody who gets an opportunity to read it, do read it, because I thought it brought the religion right up to the 21st century.
Oh,
and I
that's
think
good.
we covered all the aspects that we keep very quiet and we don't tend to discuss, but also how the British Muslims in this country are dealing with their religion and trying to integrate within the British society. And that to me was really interesting. So they still can go and socialise with their non-Muslim friends.
Yeah.
But yet they can still keep to their religion and keep to their beliefs. But again, so interesting, the clash between the culture, the Quran and the Hadith. That to me was really an eye-opener. And yeah, something I share. So if everyone gets a chance to read it, it's really good.
This woman is she should be my PA.
If I thought it was rubbish, I would tell you. 'Cause I'm sure
You mentioned there was a section about Sharia law,
Mhm.
and the Archbishop of Canterbury said something which
Mhm.
I'm astonished by what you mentioned was in his book,
Mm.
because it shows a deep misunderstanding of what Sharia law is. He says it's incompatible.
Mm.
But things like women's right in divorce,
Mm.
things like the legality of wills,
Mhm.
you know, the necessity of having to have a will,
Mhm.
were all are Islamic law, which
Mhm.
were there thousands of years before
Mm.
British law. So the idea that it's incompatible, in fact, parts of those things are British law.
Mm.
So Sharia law is really
I suppose a lot of
Really?
non-Muslims kind of, you know, when they look at Sharia law, I suppose they just look at the punishments for various offences. They don't think that Sharia is a little bit more broader than that.
I mean,
But there are Sharia councils here. There are over 70 Sharia councils here in the UK, and obviously they would deal with issues of divorce and
yeah, I
and
mean, the rules
other
are, I
legal
don't think
issues.
they need to. I mean, it's in black and white to say what happens. You know, you have to write a will, for example. You don't need a Sharia court to tell you that you should write a will. It's in black and white in the Holy Quran, and it's also part of the law of this country. You know, if you haven't written a will, here's how we divide your assets. Taken, I would say, taken directly from Islam, something like that. If you look at the time between which, you know, the laws existed in Islam and then the laws existed in this country.
Yeah.
So I'm flabbergasted that he would say.
Yeah, that's what he said. That was a direct quote.
It's just centering on one thing, isn't it? This stoning and
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, to give you a more recent example, I forget the case now, but this lady went to court and said, I want a divorce. But in Britain, you have to say, what's the other party's fault? You know, unreasonable behavior and all this kind of thing. And she said, I don't find any fault in him, but I don't want to be married to him. And the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, which said, unfortunately, the way the law is in the UK, you have to find fault. If you don't find fault, then you know you can't divorce the person.
Yeah, you have
And
to
they
have
recommended
a
the
reason. Yeah.
Parliament look at it. Now, a woman went to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and said, I want to divorce my husband, but I don't find any fault with him, but I can't tolerate to live with him. And the Holy Prophet tried, you know, reconciliation, and it didn't work, and she said, look, I'm very sorry. And he said, well, if you don't want to live with this man as his wife, then it's your right to divorce. Now the Supreme Court is saying, incorporate that in British law. Now I would say, sometimes I give sermons on Sharia's here in England, and I would say that is an example of incorporating Sharia law into British law. But you're right.
No, I think so. I mean, the people that I spoke to about who go to the Sharia councils, that the legal courts here in the UK, that they more or less accept what has been decided in the Sharia council. So, or certainly in cases of divorce.
Yes.
You see, I think where the current Archbishop of Canterbury said that British law is developed from a different culture, it is not entirely developed from the Bible or the Jewish and Christian traditions, but has been greatly influenced by what's called enlightenment or enlightened rational ideas, which came to Europe and to this country, say from about the 16th century onwards. And those things are also to be found in Islam. Islam had those, such as the reform on divorce, for example. And so the Archbishop, if you take, for example, democracy, that is to say, people electing their representatives. Now the Archbishop might say that all these laws in Britain of the past century giving people French and the right to vote, he would say that's developed in British culture. And Islamic Sharia, there's no trace of it in Islamic Sharia. But in fact, those things have not developed in Britain because the Bible said anywhere, if you'll excuse me, the Bible said anywhere that government should be by the consent of the people. But modern man found that that was a sensible thing to do, and in the Holy Quran that is also stated that true believers are those whose affairs are decided by mutual consent. And there's a chapter of the Holy Quran, Ashura, which is consent. And then the Holy Quran also instructs Muslims that you should entrust those people with power and authority who are capable and worthy of it, and then those people then should dispense equal justice. So, but unfortunately, presumably the Archbishop can be excused because he'll be looking at the situation in Muslim countries today, and not at how these things are found in the Quran. And the Holy Quran itself says that, with regard to its teachings, that these are also things which occur in the hearts of the learned people.
I suppose what was interesting for me is that out of the 55 Islamic countries in the world, that very few of them actually practice full Sharia law.
Yeah.
I think there's only 2.
Also, I don't want to go on, but this term Sharia as it's used today is of a later development, because it's not found in the Quran or Hadith or in the early Khalifas. Take Hazrat Umar, for example, who ruled over a large empire. He introduced laws, but he was unaware of anything called Islamic Sharia. In fact, according to the Quran, Sharia just means the way that the ways and traditions of the people. So Muslims would say that, in fact, if they do say that this is Jewish Sharia, this is Christian Sharia, this is British Sharia, because Sharia just means the way of a people. And in the Quran,
It's a way of life, yes.
in the Quran, it's never used to mean what's now called Islamic Sharia, nor did the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his contemporaries use it in this way.
I think that a lot of people are frightened by Sharia law because they're frightened because of the punishments, and I think and lashings and so on, so that they would read in the tabloid press.
Can I sort of ask another question? You talked about extremism and radicalisation. We live in a time where the far right have made astonishing gains in Poland, Austria, Germany. A man who said homosexuals should be killed and burned alive just won the election in Brazil. We have Donald Trump in America and what happened in the synagogues, and a man yesterday went into a yoga class and killed a load of, killed 2 women and I think injured several other women. What made you pick Islam when thinking about extremism rather than all the current things that sort of are happening, which I would say is more of a Western extremism?
Well, I did. It was originally the concept because when I was about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was given a speech about another book that I'd written, and somebody came up to me on the break and they'd asked me, because I work with young offenders and I go into young offenders institutes, and they asked me had I ever come across a young Muslim that had been radicalised. And I hadn't actually. I've never come across any. There are very few young Muslims in the criminal justice system, particularly in prison at least. And I had never come across anyone that had been, radicalised in any way. So that sparked my interest in the subject of Islam, and hence I returned to it. But when I was writing the book, as I said, I changed course. Soon afterwards, and I wrote a more general book about Islam rather than just concentration about extremism and radicalisation. But you're right, yeah. I mean, I've only written in context of Islam and Islamists rather than other, like those groups that you've mentioned who are probably just as barbaric and just as cruel.
I mean, you're right. I mean, I've never come across an Islamic extremist, other than what I see in the newspapers. But yet some of the terrorist attacks were done by British-born Muslims, such as Manchester, that you mentioned earlier. And yet recent reports are saying that British Muslims feel more British than ever before and can consolidate that with their religion. So how are we ending up in a situation where, however small the percentage is, some people are ending up doing these terrorist attacks?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, yeah. Because young British Muslims are incredibly well educated and well integrated and so on and so forth, but there's a tiny percentage of those that can be quickly brainwashed. And during my research, I discovered that it only takes as little as 17 days to actually radicalise somebody. So you can get in there and you can brainwash somebody pretty quickly. And of course, these imams that I referred to in the speech, you know, these hate preachers, you know, they're very clever men, very, very clever. A lot of psychopaths are very, very clever. Highly intelligent.
Just on a lighter note.
Oh, good.
So obviously you've written your book. You're a Catholic yourself.
Yes.
Have we managed to convert you to Islam? That's the first question. And the second question is, obviously, over the last few years, the Catholic religion has had a lot of controversy for a wide range of things. Is this something that you'll take? What's your next project?
My next project is interesting. You mentioned this. I don't know whether it's good that you've asked that. Is I am writing about Ireland and the changes that have taken place in Ireland in the last 25 years, and of course I'm going to touch upon paedophile priests. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
You had a question, didn't you?
Who was the most interesting person you interviewed? And why were they so? Because you over 100 people you interviewed.
I mean, I hope I don't offend you guys here. Your rivals, the Ahmadiyya community. I mean, I did like them. I have a soft spot for Ahmadiyya Muslims. I mean, you were talking about, you know, hospitality and friendliness. I mean, they're a very, very friendly, hospitable, warm, welcoming community, and they were extreme. Well, you know, I'm sure you guys are too, because you come from the same lineage. Do you not? Do you not? You come from the. So.
How many women did you interview?
Probably about a dozen.
Okay.
And that was by special arrangement. Yeah.
So when you spoke to the women and you spoke to the men, did you find that the way the women were explaining things and the way the men were explaining things, was there any difference or?
Well, not really, because I suppose, you know, both parties kept to the correct teachings of the Quran and how Islam should really be practiced. And obviously how culture sometimes comes in and really twists things around, and things don't get practiced the way that the Prophet Muhammad would have wanted it, and led by example.
Do you think integration is just a general problem rather than a Muslim problem or a brown problem? Because I travel a lot for work, and I've been to Bulgaria and Spain and Croatia, and there are huge, or what they call expat communities with their English pub and their all-day breakfast and their refusal to learn the language. And I see no difference between that and a community in Bradford who haven't really gone outside of that and don't speak English, for example. Is it just a human thing rather than a specific thing?
I suppose there are certain things in Islam and from Muslims that would kind of prevent them from full integration, and I suppose that's based on their religion. Obviously, alcohol is a big one, and also mingling of the sexes is also the second biggest one. So if you take those two factors, that does, you know, curtail certain forms of integration.
What does mingling mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, today you're all here together and you're mixed. I mean, this
Mixed groups and narrow
mixed,
down.
yeah.
I think that's something that's a more modern thing than what Islam says.
I don't know if you go to Sun. Most of my research was in Sunni mosques. I mean, they're very.
Very strict.
I very seldom see females.
Well,
And certainly they would be going through a different entrance.
It happens in universities when traditionally Sunni Muslims hold a meeting and so on. If there's a woman sitting on the men's side or whatever, and they're told to move, you know, they shouldn't be sitting in the same thing. And there was uproar
And Sunni mosques are generally, maybe with the exception of Friday prayers, during the week it's just men that come to
Yes,
prayers.
yes.
They're empty of women.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yes.
And you know, you might camouflage that and say, well, actually, women are allowed to pray at home and so on and so forth. But you can accept that there are some women with young children or whatever that have to be at home. But I don't know. I wasn't entirely convinced on the emptiness that it was a.
Well, we're a religion that, what approximately 1/3 of everything we know about religion is because of a woman.
Yes, that's right.
You know, without we wouldn't know what we know.
Aisha.
Oh, sorry, we wouldn't know what we know.
And I accepted fully, and I do believe people were truthful to me with the way that they described, you know, women in Islam and what the Prophet Muhammad envisaged. But, you know, I know from my own experience, even today I work with young asylum seekers from Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan and Syria. And for some of them that come over, 15, 16 years of age, they have the most appalling attitudes towards women. So where did they get that from? And they're all Muslim. Where did they get it from? It's culture, but I know, but is you know that crossover between culture and religion? It is that line is so thin.
To be honest, you can find a Hindu or a Sikh with a similar sort of attitude in
Probably.
India or in Bangladesh, you know. So I'll say it's been twisted really. You know, it's more portrayed against Islam, you know, especially in the Western countries. You never talk about Chinese people. You never talk about Hindus or Sikhs or any other culture, you know. It's always Islam, you know. So it seems like it's a target sort of thing.
But
It's an easy way to push yourself forward.
We won't make any progress unless we actually accept that there are things that we do which are against teachings of Islam.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, someone made a big speech in Pakistan to me about rights of women and widows and so on and so forth. So I said to him, he was a young man, so I said, okay, I'll find a divorced woman for you to marry. Will you do it? I'll find a widow for you to marry. Will you do it? And he just looked at me, thunderstruck.
Thought you were mad.
And yeah, I mean, another example I'd give you is that someone embraced Islam, and he was looking for a Muslim wife, and he found someone suitable. And the mother said, oh, what will the community say? She's found herself a Gora, a white man. So I said, now reverse the situation. And it's a white girl, and a Pakistani wants to marry her. And her parents react in the same way. You'll be running down Slough High Street screaming, prejudice, prejudice, prejudice. What is this that you're displaying? And, you know, unless we actually stand up and face that there are things that
need improvement, yeah.
We think and we behave. And I do a lot of work in immigration law and asylum and so on. And it was like being back at the office when you were talking about false documents, lying, cheating, and without even batting an eye.
That's
yeah,
a totally
yeah.
different issue. That's not just a Muslim or
No,
Islamic
no.
problem. You know. It can be anybody.
You're right, yeah, yeah.
It can be anyone.
But unfortunately, again, the majority of them would be Muslim because they come from Muslim countries. But you're right, it's not exclusively.
They're not exclusively.
Not
but
exclusively, but...
yes.
We've got a second speaker, so we need to...
We need to hurry things on.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to, just a comment, not a question, but I'm really enlightened of what you said. And I think you're absolutely right. And I will read your book, and I think it sounds very interesting. And I think it's nice to see somebody look afresh at things that we already know are a problem with Islam. Because Dr. Zakir Naik once said that it's not, if somebody was driving a beautiful, nice car, you call it like a Mercedes-Benz, and crashes it, whose fault is it? Is it the car's fault or the driver's fault? So I think what is happening is Islam is a beautiful religion, which you've now realized going into it, and you've expanded on your horizon, the saying that people are destroying it, and there is a lot of hypocrisy, which I agree with you.
Yep.
There may be hypocrisy in other religions and cultures. We're not debating that. We are saying we are Muslims, so we need to face up to the hypocrisy within Islam.
and then try to speak against it
Yeah.
and try to put it back on track again,
Yep.
to be able to then enjoy that sort of bliss or whatever Islam promises, you know, that life of bliss and faith. So I think, you know, you rightly pointed out in the direction.
What was also covered in the book is about male grooming scandals. I mean, that's quite in the media at the moment. And the reasons why behind male grooming scandals. So that's all covered in the book as well. I spoke about this on your rival radio station last week, Voice of Islam. Shall I stop now, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I think candid discussion and discussion amongst peer groups and amongst groups like ours produce a lot of
Yes,
thoughts
yes,
into
yes.
people's minds.
yes.
And
I mean,
unless they are answered, they remain there, and people don't have courage to ask them. And I think a lot of our problems will be solved once we open our mouths and say things without fear.
yes, 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 quite. You know, it reminds me of a teacher who says to one student, "You haven't done your homework," and the student says, "But he didn't do his homework either." You know, it doesn't help you, the fact that your mate didn't do his homework. So to say Hindus do it, Sikhs do it, doesn't help us. We are trying to say, you know, that we are a kind of an ideal people, an ideal religion and so on. So our behavior should reflect that.
You're absolutely right, and that came across last week in my interview, because I was being challenged quite a bit about it. But you know, I put you guys up on a pedestal, and I expect high moral integrity.
Integrity, yes.
And that's when I'm talking about male grooming gangs, and it's another saying, well, actually, the other people get involved in this.
Well,
They're
that's
not
right.
Muslim. Muslims, high integrity.
Yep.
If you want to be up on that pedestal, you know, you've got to
earn it.
earn the right to be there.
Yep, that's right.
Simple
That's
as
right.
that.
And I'll tell you something I said, the last grooming scandal, when they showed the pictures, in the middle was a man with a turban and a beard. And you know what I said to my wife? Thank God a Sikh was involved in this. So they can't say it's just Muslims. He was their leader. But I mean, that doesn't help the fact that the other 14 were actually Muslims. But I mean, you know, it's a sort of human emotion, a natural reaction. Yeah, I went, oh, no, not that again.
The statistics show that over 90% of war grooming gangs are white.
Yeah, that's right.
90%.
That's right.
So it's an anomaly, you could almost say,
Yeah.
these things. But, you know, the way it's reported, you know, by Paul Dackery and all that lot in the Daily Mail, etc., you know, massively makes it look like it's just a Muslim problem.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, I agree with you, this thing about the fact that a lot of the people who come over have absolutely appalling views about status of women and minorities and so on in Islam. And, you know, sometimes it's embarrassing to have them in the court and question them, because all this comes out, etc. It's great, isn't it?
What we do, what I do on my job, is they have to be challenged. These views have to be challenged.
Yes.
And they have to be told these views are not compatible with life in the UK.
Yes.
This is not the way we treat women here.
That's
this
right.
is not the way you will be allowed to treat women here.
Yes, yes.
It's retraining.
This is, yes, that's right, that's right, that's right. I find it amusing that, you know, you're sitting there, you're saying minorities should be killed, and there's a Sikh who's the immigration judge who's going to decide whether you're allowed to stay in the UK or not. Right. Yes, yes, yes. Now, our next speaker thought she'd got away with it. She's hiding somewhere there, but there's enough light for me to be able to see Adiba.
Thank you.
My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum. And for those who do not share the Islamic faith, may the peace and blessings of God the One be unto you. I start my talk with a verse of the Quran, chapter 27, verse 65. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And with Allah every day, and never give it switches on and off genes, so it can allow a cell to divide or stop it from dividing. So therefore, cancer will love this, as cancer proliferates a lot and divides. And interestingly, POP-DC, which is our gene of interest, was found to be at low levels in cancer. So the question is, why is cancer switching POP-DC like semen? A piece of DNA from a bacteria, cutting it with an enzyme, and inserting my gene of interest into this new DNA. I then make my mice cells take up this new DNA and hope that it expresses this new piece of DNA. I can then analyze this under the microscope. Now, the plasmid has been inserted with a yellow fluorescent protein. So if my cell has been successful in taking up this DNA, my cells will be yellow, which is quite pretty under the microscope. I can then see how this gene affects the protein concentration in my cells by doing something called a Western blot. And in simple terms, I take antibodies and I allow it to attach to proteins and then analyze it. I would like to end my talk with chapter 31, verse 27. My humble understanding of this verse is that irrespective of the research done and the scientific papers published in any science, we can never stop uncovering the beauties of the unseen creation. The verse is as follows. And if all the trees in the earth were pens, and the sea with 7 more seas added to it were ink, the words of Allah would not be exhausted. Surely Allah is mighty, wise. Thank you and assalamu alaikum.
It's an excellent speech by Adiba. In fact, if you hadn't volunteered, her mum was going to be the other speaker today. So she's sitting there rooting for you. Well done, Declan. I hope everyone found today's proceedings interesting and educational, etc. We're going to have tea and Maghrib and so on. But I just want to leave this message with you. Unless we are challenged, we will never make progress. It is only when accepted ideas and philosophies and so on are challenged that you go back to the drawing board and make progress. If Galileo hadn't challenged the church, we'll still be saying that the universe rotates around the earth. And sometimes these challenges would seem to be blasphemous, as Galileo's challenge was taken to be blasphemous, and he was going to be put to death. But if you, by pain of death, suppress research and advancement, all that is going to happen is you're going to be left behind. And this is sadly what's happening to the Muslim world. And I end by one example, and that was that the printing press was first presented to the Muslims as an invention. And this man went from Germany to Istanbul and a number of other Muslims. I'm told that you people love knowledge and so on, and you support its spread. Here is a machine. Rather than spend a year writing out a copy of the Holy Quran, You write it once and then in a week you can print 100 copies or 1,000 copies. And Muslims gave exactly the same answer as the non-believers gave to the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Our ancestors didn't do any of this. What is this new thing that you are telling us? Exactly the same answer. And then God answers that. What? Although their ancestors didn't know what they were talking about. And this is what has left Muslims behind, and this is why I welcome challenges, questions to traditional, they're not just traditional Islamic thought and teaching, but also about our own Jamaat. It makes me justify why we are needed in this century, despite the fact that we are facing so many difficulties. So with that, I thank Declan and I thank Adiba for an excellent speech. And I think we've got time for tea? Or is it Maghrib time? Or it's Maghrib time? Okay, let's have our Maghrib prayers and then we'll have a